Beloved heart, welcome to Immortal Star Pod episode 55, or the Elven Pod 55. I'm humming on this again. You might have remembered from the beginning. We're on episode 55 now, but I think almost since the beginning, I've wondered about my giant title, which is Immortal Starlight Dream Podcast. So it doesn't really roll off the tongue. And what I find myself naming it over and over again is just Elven Pod. And that is the name that presented to me. I think, gosh, I was designing this online work. We were dreaming it in, Joanna Delves and I, very, very dear elven wizard friend. And yeah, I remember talking to her about 7 years ago. And no, was it seven? No, it can't have been. It's more recent, maybe 4 years ago. It was perhaps the end of 2019. Yes, and an Elven Pod was then in my thoughts. But like so many things, they just pop in when they pop in so effortlessly, as though out of nowhere. Sometimes I find myself spiraling around them because they've just presented and I almost don't really even know from where. And I ask myself over and over again, is that it? So I'm thinking at the moment, it'd be so interesting if you feel to feedback, if you want to ping me an email or a comments message. If you're watching on the YouTube, you can pop a comment in there. Yeah, whether to go to Elven Pod, just to land very simply with the Elven Pod. I was kind of thinking it could be the Elven Pod or perhaps just Elven Pod. Momentous matters. You feel like holding counsel on this. So yeah, and it goes hand in hand. I've just, for the first time ever, I'm going to have, I am going to have, that's sounding definitive, isn't it? A photo shoot. I'm only being humming like that because I'm aware of the British weather and not sure on that day if it will let the shoot go through on exactly the day it's planned. But found this wonderful photographer whose work I really love. She actually does a lot of wedding photography, but her eye is just so ethereal, and the way that she sees through her soul, I just loved. Her name is Elen Sear, and Sear. I found her work and really, really loved her photography. So we're going to work together and we'll see how the weather comes. But I've always been so shy to be photographed. It's like that feeling just as though my soul gets frozen out of me. And yeah, maybe being too worried about appearance and how I look. That's an old thing. So yeah, perhaps all of that why I've held back and just letting myself finally dream into being, that presencing and what I would love to share through that. So to do that, and I'm seeing that something then I can really represent with the energy of the Elven Pod closer to. So yeah, these are things I'm humming upon, and layers of creation that emanate from the soul, just feeling how does the soul star speak and is called through all of these layers of communication that are both significant and also to be held lightly for. Yeah, I do feel how it's the purity of the connection that flows and the energy and the truths that are shared and spoken. And I think I feel more and more the peace of that, letting go of putting too much energy into that outer while also letting it unfold in harmonic resonance. So yeah, that's a little deluge of the updates there. And also, yeah, I'm on my own side really learning this movement at the moment as we're transitioning from our life in Avalon of 7 years of having a home there, raising my son there, and holding ceremonies there and being very, very much woven with a deep elven remembrance through the land there. And I'm just registering as I still on the other side of that. So I'm landing back in the family homes for now before we become ready, as we believe it is. I'm still listening for a great trip that we may commence on to look for our future home in the Mediterranean. So yeah, that's the dreaming that I'm holding powerfully and yet lightly also. But I'm also, I'm starting just to reflect on the huge and stressful, unutterably stressful process it really was, not enjoyable at all, of packing up our home And it was weeks and weeks and days of long physical work, packing everything with care, because we weren't just moving it to another home, but needing to put it in storage. So it was really huge to keep holding the elven transmissions and to keep holding the ceremonies, which are this deep unfolding ceremony of light of the dawn, while our physical life was dissolving, and not just dissolving, but being carefully wrapped, packaged, taken care of, every single part of that. And then our dear home cleaned and taken care of, much to charity shops, things to the dump, recycled, really feeling with care where everything, as we dismantled that life, went to. And that brought me in contact with a deep fear that I have danced with for a long time, ever since I was a teenager, really, of not being able to keep going, keep holding the coherent field of energy and light that I'm called to, that I will fail and fall apart and crumble. And I've learned on my journey through that fear, what I was really invited through my journey of psychological healing and so forth, was to let go of my terror of that chaos, of the emotional depths of whatever pain and darkness was building within my core or underneath, to not be afraid of the deep, dark, lost places that can emerge within the soul and the psyche and the self, but to actually turn towards, to feel deeply, and not to try and hold a kind of, a coherence and a brittle facade above that, or a coherent light, while that is kind of broiling beneath. So ever since learning that, and as one who does love, with 5 planets in Libra and all of the rest, and a very ethereal and elven soul, I can still lean into that, to that love of the coherent light patterns. But it's my way now to always address that if that's happening within my being, and to feel deeply, what might I be unwilling to feel right now about what's taking place. And that is so, really brings me back to when that pattern came in, I think, for me, as I say, as a teenager. And interestingly, I'm been reliving the strands of that, because it was around the time of my parents' divorce. And this, where I am now, this is my father's home now, but this was the family home. And when that broke apart, I just witnessed and felt not only my own loss and grief, but everyone around me, the adults who'd held my world together, dissolving into darkness, chaos, shame, guilt, fear, unimaginable loss. And they were in that state, for years, really. It's a very, when a family breaks apart, it's, it's a very, very, very deep and rippling thing. It's a reality for so many, woven at so many layers that falls apart. And I think, having experienced that myself now twice, I've been married twice now and experienced divorce and that reality coming apart, and my learning through each of that has been deepening into the beauty way of that dissolution of a reality, and really feeling, honoring what's lost, what falls apart, and dreaming into the space of that, and how that reality rebirths itself, for everyone. And so, as I relive the experience, because what happened to me then was, as a child or in my early teenage years, was I was then toing and froing between the two homes, and I would find myself hurtling from one reality that felt full of pain, feeling like maybe I'll find some relief in the other, and hurtling into another well of pain. And at that point, I really lost connection with myself. I wasn't able to hold myself together, or to hold myself through what was happening inside, what I was feeling. And I went into a very, very escapist layer and way of being. It was as though floating to an outer layer of self, and sit dreaming out of my window for hours, listening to music, thinking about the gorgeous, beautiful being of a boy I was falling in love with, and just losing myself in endless fantasy and daydreams, avoiding the pain within my being. And I stopped doing everything that I loved, really. I just, found it so hard to be present to anything. It was just an escape constantly. Started smoking endlessly, drinking, all of these things to really, weave an orb, some kind of orb of wellness and a realm that felt okay. And so what I found that happened was I lost energy. I had almost no energy for any of the things I'd done. I mean, I was such a hard worker. Loved translating ancient Greek and Latin, and that was my passion, my dream was to become an academic. And I loved working very, very deeply with very deep and fine attention. Virgo, super organized. My son just found my old notes, my GCSE notes from school, from just before all of this kicked off. And he said, "Mom, you were like a robot." I was like, I see it slightly more positively. Like, it was, I was capable of really, really deep devotion and coherence. And I loved it, the deep focus and attention. And my dream was to sit in libraries, bringing down the books from the shelves, deep and careful attention, them open before me, a state of stillness, listening, reading the records. And that was the life I dreamt. But less and less was I the person who was even remotely embodying that possibility. I couldn't focus on anything. I'd lost connection to my core being, and what was there was too frightening to feel. So with that, I lost, connection to all of that ability. Fortunately, I'd seen, because I'd worked so hard for years and years and years, and my memory was very finely attuned and developed, my ability to take in, memorize vast amounts of information and all of the rest. So I actually got through my A-level exams on 2 weeks of intense revision at the last minute, fueled on Red Bull energy drink and then rescue remedy to calm down my nerves. But I got through, and I got the grades, and I got into Oxford University. But the truth is that there was a huge pattern of dissociation that had set itself in from my core being, and I was spinning so far away from her, from myself, by the time I arrived there. At which point I underwent this extraordinary experience of spiritual awakening, and I'm not feeling to share so much that part of the story. I actually just recorded a beautiful interview with Brianna Wonderlin for the Gaia and Myth Summit, and I'll share the links to that. That will be coming out soon. And you may have heard my story before of that, of what happened when I was at Oxford, and how there was this extraordinary process of awakening that then was massively challenging, because I awoke and I was aware there was this possibility of presence of an entire earth and a self that was so profoundly real. And it was as though beginning again, that I'd forgotten, and that who I was, what I'd constructed, which by this time, because of the sort of twin strands of deep devotion of learning, twinned with years of absolute escapism, and literally just a kind of hippy dippy kind of just young one, dreaming, smoking, drinking, going to these parties that I didn't understand. I was barely able to really join in with the intense trance parties. It was too full on for my being, but I could recognize the strands of freedom and art and expression that wove through that world. And so it was something spoke to me, but I was also sort of spinning in the midst of it. That twinned with the deep years of devotion, but I suddenly, and all of the academia, so that was the sort of fragile construct of self that was built and that I'd grown here. And I suddenly, in that moment of awakening, saw how unreal all of that was. It was a construct. It was like a pipe dream, just something that had emerged that was as I saw it suddenly almost as thin as cardboard, that it held so little of source essence of who I truly was and of a true source core reality. And that in this cycle now, so strongly at the beginning of this year, we're being so called to innermost essence. And then that journey of psychological healing happened, because what I discovered was, although it was a gradual and a painful discovery, was that to be at the heart of this core innermost essence, of this mystic reality, of that immortal starlight soul that I am, to walk this unutterably beautiful earth, that I would need to feel everything I felt, even the most chaotic and terrible, painful emotions that I felt, that I would need to learn to feel those. And this beautiful guide, this amazing psychotherapist, Pamela Gaunt, who I worked with, who absolutely saved my life by deeply teaching me, staying present with me. And it took 2 years, I think, at least, of that deep retraining, because every instinct in me and all of me was about moving away from that. But to feel and to feel again. And what I would then discover was the miracle in actually feeling that. That was when, having been willing to feel that mystic moment of deepest peace of who I truly was able to come into existence, and that destiny able to be set in motion. And all these years later, I recognize it's been very interesting, because I'm literally driving the road back and forth. Both my parents live in Gloucestershire, which is this one county in the UK. They're about 45 minutes apart. Drive across the beautiful hills of these golden honeyed homes, of the stonework, very idyllic. For me, it was a world of absolute brokenness and pain and chaos. That's what I felt on the inner plane. And I'm driving that road, and I'm now able to hold myself. And it's like driving across a landscape that's so long ago. And of course, I've had layers of healing over the years and driven this road before and reflected many a time. But now something different is occurring, and something that was so frozen and cold and painful is now a space that I'm able to stay alive within, and to feel how, gosh, even within the lostness, there were clues of truth that the soul is always speaking through in our earliest dreams. The soul star always speaking to us through everything, through the hologram, no matter how broken or incoherent or inauthentic it feels at times, how caught into the structures of a world that is falling away, that the soul star has always been speaking through. And I recognize how, in that dream of the girl who longed to sit in the library and submerge herself in the records of lost civilization and ancient languages, yes, a lot of that dream was borrowed through my father and my grandfather, as I realized, and wasn't my own. But it echoed and it spoke with and sang to that elven starlight dream of my soul that is what I've come in with, which is to share the records of my people. And what I lost then, and it's been my fear, oh my gosh, am I going to crash? Am I going to break apart? Won't I be able to keep holding these gorgeous podcasts, this light? So I see my dream dissolving of my life that is changing so deeply right now. Can I hold it together? Just to face into that fear, and to let it dissolve out, knowing it's an old wound, as the last echoes of that dissolve from my being, of that pain I ran away from so long ago, and let myself feel all of her and that. And in that, I feel how her ability to bring through these records that I'm restoring, the records of the Elven Library of Light of my people, to bring through these records of peace for the dawn, of the great ages of starlighters, of all that's been, is absolutely innate. It cannot be lost. This question we sometimes ask ourselves, will I ever, can I ever, have I let my destiny down? We have not yet, and we will not. You will not. We are, and it's cycling through our being in ever restoring layers of architecture, our capacity to fulfill this. And while I am literally just emerging as that one, literally my little shelves, my nomadic shelves now of my nomadic Elven Library of Light, as I am, I'm buying new files and folders. I love working with anything that's very plain looking like this. If you're on the YouTube, you'll see I love just the plain recycled cardboard for all of my notes, because the records in here are shimmering. They are so deep. They are so detailed. There is so much. And for myself, I love the simplicity of this. It keeps me calm. There's these plain sort of craft appearance. And I've got them for files of all different sizes that hold the records of the great starlight ages of peace, of the future age that is coming, the records of the starlight Aurora moons that are inflowing, of the returning golden lands of the new earth and of the far elven ascended galaxies of light, and the ways of the temple of the morning star that are immortal and eternal and ever, and being restored to this earth, and that I'm writing through the golden wheel. And I see that I am learning, it's so beautiful, these symbolic, powerful gestures. As I found myself just this week, I ordered some more files that in my mum's house, which is the place where she sort of created the refuge and this incredible gift that she has. She was always willing to speak, to share everything, never pretended about anything, how it was or how it felt. And she still doesn't. And it's just the most incredible gift. And so in that space of that, but also gave me permission to be absolutely free, no control, never demanded, never asked that I became or was anything for her, but let me be free. And while that meant that I did spiral in that space into a very, I really went into deep escape. And every day I would just tell myself and my nervous system, I just need the space, I just need the rest. I'll get back to my devotion, to my work and all of this another day. And I'll just tell myself that every day. I just need the rest. I just need the space to come back to myself, and I'll do it another day. And instead, in that space, while that was a beautiful gift to receive, I'm giving myself an even deeper gift now, that actually when I'm free, my being expresses through devotion. My being expresses through commitment and to following through. And I am in that space where before I sat at my window listening to Beth Orton, which I loved, puffing endless cigarettes out of the window, one after another. The ceiling was black with smoke by the time I left home. That, I actually now, I've got these shelves and I'm placing the Elven records upon them. And it's out of the deepest sovereign freedom of my soul that I choose this continuity of commitment, of devotion. Every day I get up at 6 a.m. and I work until 10 o'clock at night. And it's not work. It is work. It is. This discipline is absolutely work. But this is why I'm here. This is how my freedom, my sovereignty expresses. And my joy in this lifetime is to fulfill that will I ever, I'm answering that in my own soul now. Yes, I am. And it's coming. And so that's my share for this pod. It really feels like that answering to will I ever, can I ever? We've all experienced this and are experiencing this on a global and an individual scale, that chaos, that rupture, that, the deepest trauma of the realities that have become so profoundly broken, it's unspeakable. And those states of being so known collectively and individually. And we're carrying the light into those deepest spaces within ourselves as individuals and within the collective, carrying that light of the soul star, deepest seeing, to reclaim those facets, so that whatever has been lost, whatever has been broken within those spaces can gaze back into our eyes and begin to speak of, first and foremost, to let its pain be heard, and then to speak the truth of what in its freedom, in its homecoming, it longs to give, it longs to create, it longs to become. And yes, we are. The time is now, and we are, and with every gesture we are. And so, with so much love, here's my offering of Pod 55. Do let me know what you think. I'm kind of with the Elven Pod at the moment, but let me think what you feel on that one if you feel to. So much love. Take care through this passage that is so strong with our deepest recoding and stabilizing of our innermost essence for all the world. Aho, and so it is done. Ethira Thathian.